Welcome to Portals of Perception. This is Jeff and Aviv in mid-flight tracking the Epoch Journey, and we just landed the exploration reflection on a journey that's centered on the story of the epoch by telling the 5 stories of the epoch, integrating the 5 dimensions, the 5 stories of the epoch, and then focusing on story 4, which is the dialectic sublimation story, and then within that focusing even more specifically on what will dialectic story number 4 in the potency of yellow is all about, and how might it invite the emergence of new religious expression at this time. So I'm about to transition and lead us into one more important body of work that emerged. Just before I do, Jeff, welcome again. Is there anything you'd offer by way of bridging from where we landed with the yellow dialectic appreciation?
Well, thank you again. And appreciation is a through line. Appreciation always bridges, always weaves and connects. So I would love to just continue appreciating and follow your lead. I learned during a previous conversation, I'm not flying in your slipstream because that would be very unstable, but I'm definitely with you.
Flying information.
Mid-air. Information, clearly.
And hey, sometime we even do aerobatics together in formation, and we do the aerobatics so well that sometime you lead the conversation and intuit 2-3 steps ahead of the next slide where I'm leading, which is part of the beauty of this creative dance. So to bring this, all right. So we now enter the significance again of violet, and because where we landed on the previous exploration was this, the appreciation that one of the ways to consider and internalize the endeavor of story 4 to be an agency that sublimates and dialyzes the epochal journey as it culminates into this time, that inside it we're doing this work in the ecology or in the intensification, the great intensification of indigo and violet. And it was therefore important in this 4-day journey with the global network of the Epoch Endeavor to reflect on the crises that appear inside violet, because we see crises all over the world, and we also focus specifically on the fragmentation crisis and the crisis of belief. And I endeavor to codify the crisis of belief at 3 levels by offering that the first crisis of belief is, do we have a story that explains the past and the present and that then offers a pathway forward where an emergent future begins to appear? So partly the way I am encountering and processing through this crisis of belief is by telling the epochal story. Because what I've seen and what I see with people around me is that this is part of the crisis of the moment. We largely, Jeff, lived, those of us who were born mid to late 20th century, lived inside the overarching narrative of the Enlightenment story of progress. That's the story I was born into. And that was the story that was in its high point into the 90s, in the late steps of the 20th century. We essentially thought everything was going to lead to progress. Technology was going to solve all our problems. And Fukuyama announced that it was the end of history, because the thought was, liberal democracies, free market economies, powered by technologies will solve all problems and it'll be great. But we quickly discovered in the early stages of the 21st century that many people in many societies all over the world actually found that they were left behind in this story. And guess what? Many people in the West too. So the story started to crack and break down, and even more so because of the second crisis. Because it's one thing if you tell me a story that's believable and it's great and truly communicates the past and the present and perhaps points to the future. But there is a second crisis of belief if I can't include myself in the story. I need to experience it inside out. Is it just a set of notions or concepts, or does it truly explain what is happening, not just out there, but what is also occurring inside you, inside me? Which is why when we do this work with a global network, so much of the space is artistic expression and somatic work and personal discovery and decoding the personal journey within the greater journey, which is a way we address the second crisis of belief and also the third crisis of belief. Because as we said, it's insufficient to just have a story as a concept. I need to find a way to include myself in the story, and then I need for the story to solve the communal need. Does it offer us some way to find shared meaning as a community of people in the way we see where we are, in the way we want to journey together, like in your experience, journeying together to source? There was a reason, not just practical reason, but there was a reason why you went with a group of people. Presumably you could have journeyed alone to source, but no, you wanted to go as a community of possibility, because we don't just want to discover the future on our own, we want to discover the future together. So that was an entry into what I will in a moment describe as one of the process modalities to work with it. But let me pause here. I wonder, what would you say, what would you reflect to this articulation of the three crises of belief?
Yes, well, first of all, they resonate, they calibrate for truth. And when something is true, it's probably also co-arising in the world and in the human collective. And one other example of co-arising would be the organization newstories.org, which is doing this work exactly, identifying the great narratives that explain where we've been, the current state, what is possible, where we're going, and how we find ourselves within these grand narratives. They're actually contextualizing, not just satisfying in terms of providing answers. And then these grand narratives, or maybe not so grand narratives, because they're applicable at the level of community. We can use them in our lives. We can experience them in the microcosm of our individual lives and in our communal mesocosmic lives as well. So we've got the fractal, once again, a good story shows up as a fractaline tool of consciousness.
Indeed. And to cultivate that consciousness, we decided to embark on a process we called the appraisal updating process. And what do we mean by that, and why was that important, and how is an appraisal process a modality whereby you can live into the liminal discovery of how you are new today as a method, as a way of doing, as a way of being at that discovery edge? Well, so in a different context, in a different place, when people are in the battlefield, somewhere there is a situation room and they are trying to forever appraise what's occurring in the battlefield and gather intelligence. In the business world, where I sometimes help teams, they do that too. They say, well, we can't just journey forward without listening to our customers and listening to our suppliers and be in the ongoing appraisal of our strategy. So that's the way it's been used in those spaces. What we did was we turned this thing upside down, turned it on its head, and reached for a generative, narrative forming, narrative exploring, participative, inquisitive, intuitive exploration to test all aspects about who we are, to transcend any limiting definitions as part of a self-authoring appraisal process to foster the pathway to your universal life. And again, I'll just run by you some of the dimensions of this to see how it calibrates for you and what it will bring up in you. We said we will do this work to help dissolve blockages and stop situations. Blockages and stop situations may be in any beliefs we hold on to or traumas we hold on to that hold us back from the larger potential that's available for us. So when we engage in self-authoring appraisal process, we dissolve blockages and stop situations. And we integrate the fragments and unlock frozen creativity and energy. And with it, we liberate greater versatility and greater range. Why be a piano that only plays on one octave when I can be a piano that plays on all 7 octaves, reaching to the senses and intuitions and the feelings that I used to fear to go to because I didn't know how to metabolize. I can now metabolize those safely because I'm in a safe ecology with friends, and we are encouraging and sometimes challenging, expanding that range with each other. And in that, do the work of updating beliefs and maps of meaning and values. And as we do so, calibrate truth and alignment to purpose. And something tells me that I need to pause here and give you a chance to offer some comments before I complete the slide to the first 5 to see how this is just the very premise that I can generatively walk the farm of my life, walk the mansion of my life, walk into the different chambers, different rooms, and decide to stop and pause anywhere and take it through an updating, self-authoring appraisal process, please.
Well, I do enjoy the dance of our intuitions. And the first thing I would say is the honest self-appraisal, honest reflection on the current state and what is within our experiential reality is catalytic, and I'll say again, dialytic, because when we witness, when we are clear and aware, maybe you could say aware of awareness even, watching the watching, then there's power that moves spontaneously where it needs to go. So related to liberating the greater versatility, and I would say this happens largely spontaneously as we can clearly witness our lives and not kid ourselves about where we are on the journey. We are where we are. It's perfect. The evolution is guaranteed to happen, especially when we're not denying or deluding ourselves about what is. And then in clarity, it is possible to calibrate truth. If we're denying our situation or deluding ourselves, we can't calibrate truth. We're not in truth to begin with, so we can't calibrate truth. And we can't feel the alignment to purpose. But we have the capacity to do these things when we open up and in some sense surrender what we think we know to see what is currently true about our lives. And I'm curious to see the other 4 rounded rectangles.
Indeed, and this point you just made is such an important point in this whole process, because if we deny the point of pain, if we suppress the point of unresolved trauma or unmet essential need, then we already are in a distorted or sometimes bypassing what the case is. So that all that actually the self-authoring appraisal process is a way to integrate all these dimensions and never be arrested by any of those, because as you said, I can even go in my experience and sublimate a painful moment that happened 3 days ago, or 3 months ago, or 3 years ago. And when I do so, what was painful becomes, adds to itself the sweetness of the unlocked potential of the growth that I was able to unlock from it. So the other dimensions we brought to it were indeed birth, the updated capacities and configurations. We so much of the time we know ourselves to a very small, narrow range that we have been socialized into and normalized into. So expanding into the range, speaking into a space that you're not sure or you don't know, picking up a new instrument to play, so to speak, and then build into it therefore the capacity to source new connections and to source new vibrant intelligence. And as we do so, to recenter the very core of our endeavor to the development line, to our your agentic development line, where you can find the evolutionary process. I call it the law of the tree. The tree in front of my glass door window in the yard is not growing from the roots of another tree. It grows from its own roots. And so is the case in each one of us. We can inspire each other, and yet we each must find and be supported by the agentic roots and trunk, and then source the full mycelium network of roots that we together generate, inside of which we each can grow as the tree of knowledge that we become. And then added to it the discovery alongside this of the unique service, the unique contribution, the unique opportunity, the unique work you are here, each one of us is here to do. All of that, these are all dimensions of what you reach for, what you seek, what you explore, what you cultivate in the self-authoring appraisal process as you seek to foster your universal life. And in a minute, I'll give 2 examples in greater specificity. Let me pause here again and see if there is anything else that calibrates or for you or you'd speak to that comes alive.
Well, what I'm moved to speak to is knowing that there are not just 9 dimensions. These are perhaps in some sense representative of the infinitely many dimensions of being and exploration of being that are available to us. Perhaps these 9 are somehow even holographically representative of the infinite possible dimensions to explore. And over again in our conversations, I've been deeply impressed with the thorough rigor in naming dimensions and creating these representative sets, which do feel holographically representative. In other words, we don't need to go beyond 9. We don't need to go beyond 25. Sometimes it's 5 by 5, because we're accessing the wholeness sufficiently to move on, to move to the next integration, perhaps. And so I'm prepared to do that with you now.
Indeed. So the 2 awareness points, just because I'm listening to the intelligence you're offering into this, and as you describe that, what comes alive for me is the self-authoring appraisal process is being a gardener in your own garden. It's the ecologies that you create in your garden. And sometimes you will work in a general area in the garden, sometimes you will focus on one spot and go deep, which has a bit of this homeopathy approach, because, which is the point you're making, you can drop one little change in the chemical configuration in your system, and it replicates holographically in your entire system, which is very much the intelligence of this process. And so what we did next was we went through several examples. Here is one example that we centered on, the study of resilience, which happens to be a body of work that I bring both in the work I do with leaders, and I will simply sample a menu of inquiry that we reflected on. In the study of resilience, as I do make my appraisal process, I can ask, what am I learning about my resilience through recent experiences and challenges? Is there some new learning for me about my own patterns, my own areas of weakness and my own new areas of strength? What am I learning? And what therefore practices and ways have I developed throughout my journey that I truly cherish and that I celebrate, because they forever renew me and they afford me freedom and possibility. So in the appraisal process, you will sit with a question like this, maybe for 20 minutes, maybe for a day, maybe for a week, and it will connect to all other threads. So you could then couple it with the inquiry that invites, well, what makes me vibrantly happy and energized, which is part of the inquiry of resilience. Let me pause here actually and see if you have first intuition and response and what it brings up for you, applying this process to the study of resilience.
It's interesting that at the very beginning of our conversation, I was feeling into the enhanced resiliency that is available to humanity, that is expressed in our daily lives by virtue of all of this interconnectivity, which can be the interconnected understandings, the interconnected perspectives. You said multi-perspectival. And so somehow there's a big question, I would say, for the species in the collective mind. Are we going to make it? Do we have the resiliency to shift from being Homo sapiens sapiens to becoming Homo universalis? And my answer is yes, we have the resiliency. And the extent to which we see that we have the resiliency is, well, at least correlated with the extent to which we express the resiliency. Partly because what we believe we have access to, we give ourselves permission to express. So another gift of this process.
Indeed, and once again, just capturing two words from what you said that are so central to this appraisal process and to being generatively creative in telling the story of your life anew every day. Waking up in the morning and saying, no, I was who I was yesterday, and today I'm telling the story again in a new way. It's all the paradigms is I have to get permission from somebody else. I have to get permission from the leader. I have to get permission from the God Almighty. No, you are your own creator. You wake up in the morning and you have permission to rewrite your story today. So that is what you said that stopped me there. And then adding the question, so where am I still susceptible for psychic infection and psychological vulnerabilities, and why? And which of those points I accept and it is what it is, and which of those points will I release and say, yeah, that was great then, and I'm not prepared to release this vulnerability and infection. And what external persuasions do I tolerate and allow in to still produce in me self-doubt? Because one of the kind of infections and vulnerabilities we suffer in the modern age is that so many things will continue to impress you in a way that will hook you down the nervous system to self-doubt. So can we be forensic about that? And can we release some of those those persuasions? And then, well, what has worked well for me in my recovery practices with these issues and my resolve sciences? How do I recenter? How do I re-energize? How do I turn the psychic infection and the doubt to a fertile ground to my next new evolutionary arising? These are all part of the study of resilience. And then I brought into it the inquiry around, well, so what am I discovering about the interplay of the physical, mental, emotional, relational, and spiritual resilience? Because when I teach resilience with leadership teams, I bring to them those 5 dimensions, and I invite them to reflect with a whole portfolio of practices and habits and protocols that I share with them and rituals to discover, well, which of those will I embrace more fully to uplift my resilience, and how can I boost each of those 5 pillars of resilience, the physical, the mental, the emotional, the relational, and the spiritual, which are all sourced in the greater intelligence domain of resilience. And therefore, what do I feel called to initiate, to assemble, to fashion, to facilitate? So to facilitate greater freedom, sovereignty, and agency in my own endeavor with resilience. Anything else that's arising for you about the study of resilience, either in the personal or in the species sense?
Well, what comes to me is that life is nothing if not resilient. And the fullness of life is fully resilient. And the ways in which we can perceive this fullness include asking powerful questions, such as these. One question that I love is, where am I susceptible to psychic infection and psychological vulnerabilities, and why? I often ask the question, where am I not fully conscious? Where am I not fully awake? I could be the Buddha. In some sense, I would say we are all the Buddha, and we can still ask the question, where am I still not fully awake? Where am I still not fully resilient? And this isn't necessarily to go looking for gaps. It's part of the honest self-appraisal. So if we only do that, then I would say that's not a whole inquiry. When we ask the difficult questions, the honest questions about where we are, in conjunction with, okay, well, what habits and protocols and rituals do I have? What practices do I have that I know work to uplift and up-level this system, this consciousness system? So I like, again, that there are 9. I'm sure we could have more questions, and I get a total yes that this is a sufficient set for one to go all the way to the limit case, where there is no unconsciousness, there is no unawakeness. My sense is we don't have in our history or herstory examples of one or all of us going to the limit case, and yet the limit case is not an asymptote. It's not forever unattainable. It is very available. It is in us now, and we're opening to it. We're like a flower opening to the sun of our own realization and resiliency.
Well, may I actually pause here for a moment and ask you back then about your appraisal process and study which you are describing, which is when you ask yourself that question of, where am I not fully awake? Where am I not fully conscious yet? How do you let the flower of that inquiry? What is the process? Just share, please, a little bit the gift of your interior appraisal process with that kind of inquiry, because this is the kind of work we need to learn to embrace. Please, what would you offer from that?
Well, it seems like a heavy question. Where am I not fully awake? Oh, where am I still rooted in suffering? Actually, for me, it's quite fun. I'll ask sometimes for a letter. What's the first letter? So then this gets me out of contriving a response. And let's just say I get an I. Oh, an I. Okay. What's the second letter? Maybe I get an N. And then I might immediately get, oh, interpersonal relationship. I'm not fully enlightened in interpersonal relationship. And I would ask the question, who is? It doesn't matter. There's no comparison. But there's more intersubjective enlightenment available. Great. Okay, I say yes to that. And as soon as I say yes, let's say in the core of my being, then I know that it's already in process. I'll be shown opportunities to be more awake. I'll be given insights to help me metabolize the unawakeness. And I know the process just works and I can trust it. I can trust it to work. Then another fun, we can gamify this, right? Another fun way of asking the question and receiving guidance is to connect with the inner conclave. Maybe Durga is going to say, oh, yes, well, let me swing my sword, ego death or whatever it might be. And look, I asked the question, to what extent am I operating from ego? To what extent am I operating transcendent of ego? And for me, ego is defended sense of self. And look, wherever we are, we are. But if we can ask the question, if we can then clearly see the extent to which something is the case, then we're already beyond it. We're already expanded beyond that defendedness, for example. And I just completely trust that there is a point where, and I know actually from experience, that the questions fall away. If I ask a question enough, at some point, like it's fully metabolized and there's no further need to ask the question, to what extent am I susceptible to psychic infection, or to what extent am I operating from unconscious, defended, small self? That has happened in various ways. And interestingly, there are infinite permutations and flavors of the inquiry. So it continues to happen. And I'm honest about at least I'm claiming to be honest about the human that sits before you that is a work in progress.
And the gift I'm harvesting from your offering here is the various modalities and various processes you will use to help you not follow the patterns, the habitual patterns. So you will ask, what's the first letter? Such that you don't immediately go to an answer or a pattern that you already know. And in that way, there is a way to playfully apply different modalities to be new in yourself, to not get bored and to also not get arrested in any limitations. So let me then with that lead to, I think I have two more spaces to in this explore, right? So one was to, okay, if you are going to embrace this self-authoring appraisal process, well, here is a large opportunity landscape. You can apply it to just about any aspect of your life. For example, you can choose to bring this to the way you treat your health and the caretaking of your body, including nutrition, rest, and repair. You can do the appraisal on your living situation and ecology, environment in which you operate. You can bring your appraisal to your relationships with money. You can choose to bring, I think I have a spelling typo there, but that's all right. How do you prepare to the latter stages of life? And that's something that sometimes requires appraisal. And you can choose to say, okay, how am I doing in my network of relationships? What am I serving in these relationships and where do they serve me? And how am I in this new stage of my journey called to update that? So part of the impulse of engaging in an appraisal process is attending to your life, treating your life as a garden that you attend to, not just letting your life run on autopilot. And when there is a problem, either something get broken with money, or something get broken with relationship, or something get broken in your environment, or something get broken in your health, then you attend to it. No, you are proactively, generatively, creatively saying, I am the vessel of the living experience that I get to participate in, and I attend to the totality, the full range of the mention of my life, and I bring this generative, creative process to it. And that includes also the communal service and engagement that I choose to offer. And surely my development journey and creativity and my contribution, and also therefore my spiritual well-being and intactness. And inside it, the causes and the purpose I'm here to serve. So just a quick overview. And as you said, codified in 9 spaces, can easily turn this into a 24 spaces. but a bit of a landscape appreciation of appraisal opportunity for each and every one of us. Anything you'd offer to that?
Well, thumbs up. And to have a list of domains to check in on is actually already quite liberating. And I have found that when I do check in, when I do ask questions, when I do say yes to the additional opportunities for learning and growth and awakening, the additional opportunities for right relationship with money as well, that's been a focus in my work, then life provides. Life is very happy to dance with us when we are open to its leadership in the dance. And life brings the answers and the solutions.
Indeed. So as always, I am immediately adopting your offering. So I'm adopting this by saying and offering back that what we are exploring in the self-authoring appraisal process is a way in which we let life leads us within the various domains of our life. So that brought me to then the final piece today, which is to offer an appraisal of the 5-year Epoch Journey. So this has been a network. And at some point in any endeavor you engage in, it's useful to appraise, well, how is it going? So I decided to look at it. And this is something I haven't done over the weekend. This is something I've done last night. I said, I'm talking with Jeff in the morning. So let me actually do this because I need to be fresh and honest with myself about doing this work live. And this is what turned up. I said, I want to appreciate the personal, the communal dimensions and the work of the Epoch Journey itself. So again, very high level. The personal, there has been profound healing phenomena along that journey. Many people experienced healing of chronic conditions, some cathartic experiences of release of psychological conditions. So when you get an experience, a communal, mutual experience, where people experience tremendous healing, you're doing something right. It's something is done correctly by the community. And when the healing phenomena is added with developmental phenomena, where more and more people are discovering the release of their blind spot and humorously are able to look at stop situations and disarm polarizing issues that before held them back, then something healthy and natural is occurring, and life, as you say, flows through the experience. And when that is added with the liberation phenomena that is seen in the creativity, the artistic expression, with people finding a sense of purpose, and with all of it releasing healthy humor, then there is a validation that's accruing at the personal level for the people along the journey. And then when that is added with, in the communal, in the sense of mutuality, with a growing sense of shared effort and shared ecology of mutual respect and mutual support and mutual encouragement and greater openness and transparency, coupled with shared application of we're putting ourselves to practice, we're trying different modalities, we are endeavoring in small teams and pods to cultivate those, then something healthy, something natural, something organic is unfolding, especially when you feel an experience that is accompanied with the shared spirit and the shared sentiments of purpose and friendship and love. Love in the broadest sense of love of shared purpose, love of being together in the human experience and the unlocking of what we are describing in the idea of a transitional step function change in the epochal journey. And then looking at what the epoch work released, it had become a running revelation of new connections, perceptions, and practices. I mean, I have probably experienced 400 or 500 specific perceptions, modalities, vitamins of new knowledge and new permutations, many of which shared with you, all of which is a draft form. Nothing is proprietary. Everything we're sharing here is the best, latest iteration that we come to as a draft, and tomorrow there may be a furtherance of that. So, and where this running revelation is coupled with an augmenting sense of meaning and connectedness and liberation and blossoming of life, which I've personally experienced and I've seen many friends around me experience, I know we are involved in something healthy and right, especially with the enhanced, vibrantly blessed presences and emanatory infusions and elevations that accompany us. And perhaps the most important as an honest testing of that is what is not present. Nobody is manipulating no one. Nobody is stealing anyone's money. I am not the leader of anyone. This is framed as a journey that I'm sherping. I'm bringing us to the trailhead, and now we are hiking on the trail, and sometimes there is a breakthrough realization that will emerge with somebody else. So I do have an important leading function, but I'm not the leader of anybody, surely not a guru of anyone. And this is part of the idea of a post-guru epochal transition where we co-lead, where we need each other, because actually through the integration and through the shared discovery and through the co-creative challenging sometime and provoking ourselves, we create the greater foods. We produce the greater foods for the gods, because the gods love it when we build together new permutation, when we dance together, we sing together, when you build on one half-baked revelation that emerged with me that I'm not fully yet realizing its full significance, and you say, well, yes, what you're describing is a way of metabolizing and processing the journey of life, and you let life lead you. That is, Aviv, what you're describing in the self-authoring appraisal process. So a brief appraisal, 5 years into the journey, and we're inside something that's free, and that involves no commercial agenda, and is purely done out of the love of the human spirit and the fact that we are involved in the journey of shared consciousness and evolution about this change and the change we are experiencing inside and all around us. So, which is, I feel, the sentiment we bring together to this conversation, Jeff. So I will let you bring the final words on this exploration today.
What a beautiful example of open inquiry, the 5-year Epoch journey so far. And life is open. Life is an open system. The universe is actually an open system. And so how do we live? How do we dance with life in an open system? It seems to me that you are pioneering certain understandings and modalities for how to dance with life in openness. And in the openness, each of us can show up fully and very resiliently and creatively. Openness is liberation, and inquiry grounds us in our own nature, which then allows us to continue to express and flower. And who knows what this will look like in 5 years? It's not actually written. We're writing it as we go, with each step in the inquiry and each revelation and half-baked idea that will continue to cook in some form or other. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jeff. Let us, as you said, proceed in dancing with life to become the food the gods will not be able to resist, such that they shower us with the blessings and enhancement. To be continued.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Along with our website at portalsofperception.org, Portals is also available on YouTube and on all podcast platforms, as well as social media. You can become an active member and join the conversation in community events. And you can help us get the word out by liking this content and by sharing it with your friends.